Hi, this is Dr. C, and we're going to be talking about JavaScript and kind of go over some introductory topics and some basics. So let's go ahead and take a look at these and get started. So what is JavaScript? And I'll be abbreviating it JS. Basically, it's a very easy to learn programming language, and it can be used for client-side work, which means adding interactivity that works in your browser on your laptop, or it can be used for server-side, which means it's running off a server to do things like connect to databases and stuff. And we'll use it mostly for server-side, which is what most standard programming languages do. Okay? Uses a standard structure that is very similar to every other programming language: Python, Java, Visual Basics, Ruby or Rails, all the rest of them. Okay, they're all about the same as far as the structure. We'll be using JS6, which is you'll also see called ES6. So we're using version 6. That's the newest version. A couple of main differences you'll see if you're looking at code that was written in earlier versions of JavaScript. It will still work, but they may use var, and we will be using let instead of var. You'll see that in these videos. And they will be putting, on the older versions, we're required to put a semicolon at the end of each JavaScript statement. That is no longer required, so we don't do that. So that saves us a little bit of a hassle. Okay, so the structure of commands in JavaScript. These are the key or the reserved words that Java has. So they're basically the command set. Some examples are let, if, then, for, while, length, etc. Okay? You cannot name things that you create in your program using those key words, because those are reserved by JavaScript for its use for commands, and it wouldn't know the difference otherwise. So sometimes you'll get an error message, and this particularly comes into play when we create variables, which we'll talk about in a later video. So these are reserved, and every programming language has its own set of reserved words. Some are similar to what JavaScripts are, a few are different. In JavaScript, there is one notable difference from a lot of programming languages, and that is that it's case sensitive. So if you have something in capital and then the same word with lowercase, the computer will consider those two things as different, even though they're the same word, but it will be looking at the case. So the way to get around this issue so it doesn't trip you up is to use all lowercase whenever possible. And if you want something to that you're making and making up a name for, if you want it to be more readable, you can use camel case, which is what we have here. Camel case is when you start with a lowercase and then you go to a capital, and then if I had another word here, I'd use another capital. So it's just easier to read. We'll have more on this later. Okay, so every JavaScript program is made up of JavaScript commands, operators like equal signs, plus signs, etc., and names that you create for storage areas that you put data in. And those are called variables, which we'll talk about more in a later video. So let's look at an example program called Hello World, which is always the one that you always start with in programming languages, and it's the simplest possible program. Okay, steps to writing a program. The first thing you do is you write an algorithm. Okay, and we will do that. You studied algorithms. Then you write the code to implement the algorithm, and then you run the code, which is the program. And by the way, as we get into bigger programs, you won't write the whole program in step 2. You'll write 2 to 4 lines of the program, save it, run it, see if it works. If it works, great. You continue back to line 2 or step 2, write 2 to 4 more lines, run it. If it doesn't work, you know the problem is in the previous 2 to 4 lines that you wrote. As opposed to if you write the algorithm, write the entire program, and then run it, and it doesn't run, and let's say it's 20 lines long, you don't know where in that 20 lines the error is. So that's why we don't do it that way. Okay, so here's our hello world program. The problem that you're writing the program to solve is that you want to display the message hello world to the user. And the user is who's ever running your program. We call them the user, the end user. So the first step is to write that algorithm. And this is an algorithm that I wrote for this problem. So the first thing I want my program to do is put the text hello world in a container to store it. Oops, sorry, I jumped ahead. Here we go. Is put the text hello world in a container to store it. This container can hold data, and it's a named container. That's a variable. The second thing I want to do is use the JavaScript display command alert to display what's in the container. Okay, and then I have a little note to self. Put hello world in double quotes inside the parentheses or single quotes. So in these parentheses after the alert, you put whatever you want to be displayed. And the alert puts up a pop-up window. So let's take a look at this. That was the first step, write an algorithm. Here's our algorithm. Now I'm going to use it to write the code. And so I'm going to, oops, sorry. Well, I'm having all sorts of trouble here. Let's, there we go. And I want to go back one. There we go. Okay, so now I want to write the code to implement this algorithm. So the first step of the algorithm says, put the text hello world in a container to store it. So that's what I do here. I say let message. Message is a container that I'm naming. Let says create a container. Message is what you want to name the container. And this is not a comparison equal, like is this equal to that. In this case, we're using it to say, put whatever's on the right into the container on the left. So I'm putting this hello world into this container. And it's a new container because I create it by that let command. Then I go back to my algorithm. Use the JavaScript display command alert to display the hello world. So I'm going to say alert, and then I'm going to put my container name in the parentheses. And this will cause the JavaScript program to go in and see what the container message contains and display it in an alert or pop-up window. Okay, so let's go look at this. Oh, step 3 is run it. So here we're going to run this. And there we go. Okay, so that's how it goes. And that's all I've got for you on this video. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.